Sadnam, what's going on, everybody? All right, welcome to this month's edition of Vedic Astrology Happening for the month of April. Okay, I got to tell you, this is hands down the most excited I've been to do one of these this whole year. This month is friggin' nuts, and there's so much happening, but literally, I'm going to focus this whole monthly forecast on one single event. So I hope you have the time to watch this. It's going to be a little longer, but I promise it's worth it. I'm going to give you some practices that I highly recommend you do leading up to this event. So let's get into this. Energized AF right now. This is a new software I'm using for my Jyotish readings and calculations. So you can ignore a lot of this, but I want to focus on the primary chart up here. So this is where everything is right now, April 1st in the morning, okay? What we're going to be looking at in this month is that there's going to be a total solar eclipse taking place that will be peaking late in the evening on April 19th Pacific time, about 11:30 Pacific. It'll be going on for a few hours before and a few hours after, but that's the peak of this solar eclipse that's going to be taking place in the constellation of Aries. So I'm going to just jump right to that date, April 19th, and let's take a look at what's happening. This is so cool. All right, here we go. So 11:30 in the evening, and this is what we got going on. In Aries, we have the sun, we have the moon, we have Mercury, and we have Rahu. Let's talk about Rahu for a second. So Rahu is not actually a planet. You can't look up in the sky and say, oh, there's Rahu, like you can for the other planets. Rahu is what's known as a shadowy planet, a shadowy energetic. And it's a location where eclipses can occur. They don't always occur where Rahu is, but anytime there is an eclipse, it has to do with either Rahu or its counterpart Ketu. I'm going to talk about Ketu for next month because that's going to be more important for the lunar eclipse happening on May 5th. But for right now, let's talk about Rahu. Rahu and Ketu, for that matter, are considered to be malefic energies. Malefic, meaning they're difficult, they're challenging, and they're subtle. You can't see them in the sky like you can a planet. They're more subtle in nature. They're beyond the physical world, right? If you look at the yogic tradition, Rahu and Ketu have to do with what are known as the Ida and Pingala Nadi. These are the two nerves, energetic nerves. Again, they don't exist physically, but they're energetic channels that run up and down the spine, the Sushumna Nadi, the main channel of the subtle body or the astral body. And Rahu and Ketu merge where the different chakras are, the seven chakras. They're the Kundalini Shakti. They're connected to the Kundalini and the rise of the Kundalini up the spine that ultimately leads to awakening, realization, moksha. However, they are connected to serpents or demons in the Vedic tradition. And serpents and these demons are very connected to karma and desire specifically. And karma is what binds us to reincarnation and to suffering, unfulfilled desires specifically. And Rahu is also known by the names of smoke or illusion and delusion. It's connected to the subconscious mind in particular, and desires, unfulfilled desires, also sense pleasures, addiction, greed, you know, dishonesty, even to a degree. It's got this allure to it, but it's typically an allure that leads to our destruction or our demise ultimately. It's not sustainable. Now, what's so interesting is that in Aries, where Rahu is, the sun and the moon will also be there, and that's what's causing the solar eclipse. Rahu desires to eclipse the moon. Its sole desire is to devour and have vengeance on the moon. And the moon has everything to do with our emotions and with our mind. So Rahu disturbs, devours, clouds our minds, clouds our emotions that can lead us into doing questionable things oftentimes. We lose our head. Rahu is a snake that's had its head cut off. It's a severed head. That's what it can do to us. Now, the sun, on the other hand, has everything to do with our soul and with our nature as pure consciousness. It's that sat, that transcendent, ever existence, parush, they call it, spirit beyond form. It's causal in nature. What's so interesting is that the sun in Aries is known as exalted. It's the strongest position in the whole entire zodiac that the sun can be in. It's at its most powerful point. This is very connected to the third chakra. Aries and Mars rules Aries, is connected to Manipura chakra, that center of will, of manifesting our desires. And we have an exalted sun there, which is a very powerful thing for desire, for will, for drive. However, Rahu's involved in this whole thing, and there's an eclipse. So, very intense energies. The sun is prana. The sun is life force, it's vitality, it's illumination. It has to do with the ajna, the crown chakra. The moon has to do with soma, bliss, intuition, also the crown chakra, which is where the kundalini rises to. So the fact that we're having this solar eclipse with an exalted sun in Aries is very, very, very potent from an energetic perspective. Now, at the same time, Saturn is kind of joining into this party where it's very strong in Aquarius. Saturn has to do with the Muladhara chakra, the root chakra, which is where the Kundalini lives when it's not activated, when it's not flowing into the higher centers. Saturn, though, too, is a malefic influence. Typically, it's the lord of decay, the lord of disease, the lord of death, but also the lord of karma and the lord of action and discipline and sadhana, the lord of the yogis and those who desire to transcend duality and experience the everlasting pure, unbounded nature of our real essence as consciousness. So, very interesting that Saturn is kind of kicking into this whole thing. And then, even more than that, Jupiter is almost into Aries. It's right on the cusp. It's at 29.5 degrees Pisces. So, its energy is almost bordering into this whole thing. Jupiter is connected to the sacral chakra, Svadhisthana chakra, the water element, devotion, pure sweetness, ojas, vitality also, but also pleasure and sensuality, creativity too, to a degree, but also dharma and the guru and wisdom and grace and prosperity. So how wonderful that we have both Saturn and Jupiter involving themselves in this eclipse as well. More than that, Venus is in Taurus, which has to do with the Anahata chakra, the heart center, love, pranayama, beauty, refinement. Oh, wow. We love this. So you've kind of got this like Jupiter Venus sandwich, the second chakra of Pisces and Jupiter, and the heart center of Venus and Taurus, kind of sandwiching this third chakra center solar eclipse. And then to top it off, we have Mars in Gemini, which is connected to the fifth chakra, Vishuddha chakra. Uh, Gemini is connected to the throat chakra. So we actually have all of the core five chakras from the root of Aquarius to the sacral of Pisces, to the third of Aries, to the fourth of Taurus, to the fifth of Gemini, with most planets in either their own signs, Saturn in Aquarius at the root, Jupiter in Pisces at the sacral, Venus at the heart, in Taurus, and then you actually have the sun exalted in the third in Aries, and you have an exchange between Mars and Mercury. Mercury is in Aries, ruled by Mars. Mars is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury. Aries third chakra, Gemini fifth chakra. Those planets are exchanging with one another. So this is a wild lineup. I mean, you just like can't get a more potent lineup to me than this for this exalted sun solar eclipse in Aries, and all of the chakras and their lords and exchanges really in alignment with it. So I'm pumped for this. I think this is fantastic. However, the thing about eclipses, very potent, very subtle, because during an eclipse, it's not ordinary. What happens when the sun is totally blocked out? It's not the normal type of nature. And so eclipses can bring extraordinary types of energies for better or for worse. And to me, that's why this whole thing is about being in relationship with these forces, understanding what's happening, why perhaps things are feeling the way they're feeling. And there's no judgment about any of this. It's just about being aware and bringing some consciousness to what's always affecting us. Is just to what degree are we tuning in with it? And so eclipses are really times of working again with the subtle prana, the astral body, the more even more causal seeds of karma and desires and life force. So ideally, it's a time where you're doing deep practices of sadhana, meditation, yoga, worship, interior introspection. It's not really an ideal time to be going out and moving or signing business deals or trying to make a baby, although maybe that actually would be a good time to do that, but it could be a little interesting as to how that baby turns out. And so it's about using again the subtle life force to have an inner experience. It's the inner sun, it's the inner moon, it's the inner you know interaction of prana in all the different ways of the chakras. So I personally, just to kind of begin to wind this video down, I would recommend working with the energies of Rahu, the moon, and the sun in particular. Those would be the three core planetary energies that I'm going to be working with this whole entire month and beyond until the next eclipse happens. I'm going to include those with the email if you want to read about some of these remedial practices. I'm also working a lot with Saturn because of Saturn's very strong influence. But even, I mean, you could pick any of these planets to work with, but specifically Rahu, the sun, and the moon in Aries, which is a fire sign, very powerful cardinal sign of the zodiac. It's that pitta, that drive. So wonderful time for manifesting desires, but again, doing the inner work first and foremost, stabilizing the container, stabilizing the vehicle before you go acting in ways that maybe can get you into trouble. So hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I think this month is just going to be so potent. And remember always that Jyotish is really about engaging and having a personal relationship with these forces. It's about respecting the perfection of, the creation and of the divine intelligence, and really being in mystery of it all. What I'm saying, yes, it's a science. Yes, it's got some laws to it, but ultimately, there's a transcendent intelligence that's beyond all of this, and it's all love. All of this stuff is all energy. That's an expression of love, joy, bliss. Sat Chidananda. So that's what we ultimately want to be anchoring into, and these planets and their energies and their movement are just guideposts that help us to align with that in a deeper way. So I wish us all the best during this month. And it can be a lot. So just be aware of that, and depending on what your rising sign is, depending on what your natal chart is, depending on the period that you're in, and all of the positioning of your own planets in your natal chart, it's going to have a different twist. This is all still going to be true, but it's going to be different depending on the houses of your chart and the interaction of your planets and your periods. So, yeah, let's have a good time with it, and let's just use the energies, I would say, that are going to be available very, very strong. And then I will do another video for the month of May that will be really focusing on the lunar eclipse that will be happening in Libra at that time. That will also be pretty interesting. Not quite as interesting as this one, in my opinion, but still, it will be pretty interesting nonetheless. All right.